what's come. My new Nikkor Z DX F3.5 VR Powerzoom lens. Must be, I think, about the first in the country, in the UK, to get this. Nikon sent me it from the Netherlands this morning. Took a day to come after they actually shipped it. So let's unbox this best I can with one hand. There she is. Very light. Nothing but some instructions in this. That's it in the box. Very light lens. Right, this video, let's get this in focus. This video is going to be about me comparing it to my Viltrox 13mm f1.4. So this is one of my favourite lenses. Fantastic lens. It's amazingly fast, f1.4. It's beautifully built, and a lot of my videos are done with this lens here. It doesn't have any VR on it, and obviously it's a prime, so it doesn't have any sort of zoom. This is the new Powerzoom from Nikon, and this one has a very even wider field of view at 12 millimeters. It zooms with a power zoom to 28mm, and a power zoom means that it's literally a motor powered zoom, so you can get really smooth zooms on video, and you can use the camera. And I've got I'm shooting this on a Nikon Z30. I've got the latest firmware update, and the camera also allows you to assign buttons to zoom in and out with the new firmware update. And we're going to have a look at both of these lenses and see how they compare. I think there's a real use case for having both of these lenses, and I'll come on to. So let's have a look at the build quality of these two lenses. This is the Viltrox. It comes with a nice metal lens hood, which incidentally I've checked, and it fits on here as well. It works on there, so that's good. It comes with a bag. This comes with absolutely nothing. This is all metal, this Viltrox lens, absolutely solid. I love on this the specialist aperture ring. I use that all the time because I shoot aperture priority, and I often put that down to 1.4, so it's always going to be on 1.4, but it's smooth moving, and if you put it on there, when you get to 16, f16, it clicks, and then it goes on to automatic. It's a hefty lens. Because of its all metal construction, it's quite heavy, and this is a good point. It has a blue weather sealing ring, only for some reason on the Z-mount Nikon version. So I'll show you some footage, but if you look at sort of my Weber barbecue videos, some of my air fryer cooking videos, most of them are shot on this lens. I really like it because of the amazing shallow depth of field you get. Now turn into the Nikon lens, very bare bones this. It's very light, made out of plastic, but it feels fairly substantial. The rings move reasonably well, quite smooth. You can hear the VR rattling around inside, I think, because this one's stabilised, so the elements will move inside. I have actually got a filter on this, so 67mm filter on them both actually. On the Viltrox I've normally got this on, which is my variable ND32 filter, because if you want to get the f1.4 aperture, which I like to shoot on, particularly outside, you need one of these filters on really to slow the shutter speed down when videoing. Probably won't bother as much on this because this only goes down to f3.5, so it's not going to have the shallow depth of field on this lens, which is on that lens. Also, comparing the mounts, this is all plastic. Fine, I don't have an issue with it. I don't think it'll ever break or ever be an issue. Keeps the weight down. But if you look at this one is solid metal. So big differences, if you like, on the face of it, build quality, which could be, and I say could be, a good or a bad thing for reasons I'll come on to. Now the reason why I bought this lens is basically as a travel and holiday vacation lens. I determined it's going to be extremely good for walking around with because it's stabilised, whereas the Viltrox one has no stabilisation in it. Now it's not a killer that because they are so wide. This is 16mm, this is 13mm, this one's 12mm, and because they're so wide, they don't show shaking as much anyway. But stabilisation, because the cameras, the Nikon DX cameras, APS-C, don't have any stabilisation built in them, and therefore it's very nice to have it in the lens. So that's one of the reasons I bought this. This of course is also a zoom lens. This one is 13mm, lovely and wide, as I said. This one's a power zoom, as I said, which means that it's powered by the camera. Like you know, you press a button and it zooms in out really smooth, and you can change the speed, so you can get some really cinematic zooms on it. And this one is 12 to 28, but remember that's APS-C cropped, and you've got to basically times it by 1.5, multiply it by 1.5, so that's 18mm to what, 42 millimeters in a full frame sensor. So that's a really nice option as a travel lens, whereas this one you're stuck all the time with the 13mm. I'm going to give you some sample footage of these two lenses and also show you what I think is the best use case for each. So this is the first use case. On a tripod, you don't need any stabilisation. I've got no special light in here, there's a big window there. Lights on, it's not particularly light in here. This is where the Viltrox really, I think, comes into its own. Wonderful bokeh. I've got it F1.4. It's on 1/60th of a second, which is what we like because I'm shooting in 30 frames per second. ISO is currently showing 140 to 160. It's going up and down a little bit. And I think, look at the quality of the image, it's absolutely lovely. No complaints. And this, as I say, this is the use case for the Viltrox. You're making a YouTube video inside, maybe even outside, as I say, with the neutral density filter on it. And you want close-ups of products and things like that, but you want that bokeh and you want it to look really good, really nice quality. What can be better? And this is why I highly recommend the Viltrox lens. Now, this is exactly the same distance from the camera as I was with the Viltrox. Not as good bokeh because the aperture at wide open on this lens only is f3.5, and as a result my shutter speed has dropped down to 1/30th of a second, which is actually a bit low. The Nikon does this, it's a bit of a pain actually, as to why it picks these lower shutter speeds. It's trying to balance, but I think it should really pick a bit higher. And it's ISO 400, that's the difference. With the Viltrox I could get ISO 140 to 160 and 1/60th of a second. The bokeh isn't as good, but notice the field of view is wider because you've got another 2mm on this lens. So that is a plus to the lens. But of course this lens also has a zoom on it. Unfortunately it's a variable aperture, and still stupidly the Nikon picks 1/30th of a second when in aperture mode. Nikon, please sort that out on the firmware, because 1/30th of a second for video isn't fast enough shutter speed. Luckily I'm not moving around much. The aperture has gone down to f5.6, which is the smallest it can be at this zoom. Not brilliant for inside because it's a really slow aperture, is f5.6, and its ISO is now up to 1250, so not ideal for this. For this type of scenario on a tripod inside, you're much better off with the Viltrox, I think. Sticking with the Nikon lens again, the camera has decided to keep it now on 1/50th of a second. I won't keep going on about that, but it is irritating. F3.5, and this is the type of shot you'd do. Imagine if you were showing something on YouTube, like I do quite a lot with the food and things. So this is my coffee cup, look. I got some new coffee cups, big coffee cups, very good. So that's on as wide as possible with this lens on the 12mm. F3.5, ISO 320 in this light, just with light coming in through the window and from the lights above. 1/50th of a second. Looks nice. You still get some bokeh with it, don't you? It's nice. But let's put the Viltrox on, because again, the Viltrox will excel in this. But what I would say is look at the judder on the camera. Because of the VR, it's looking very still, isn't it? Even though this is just handheld. Nice and still, so that's an advantage. So have a look at that. Nice, it's a nice lens. The image quality in this Nikon lens is absolutely fantastic, I think. Now this is the Viltrox. And that's F1.4. Now the difference is, you see, we're down to an ISO of only 160, and in fact the shutter speed is 1/200th of a second, which I don't think you can alter, unfortunately, because it might be picking up the flashing of the lights on 1/200th of a second. So if you see that, that's not the lens. It might be picking it up on the screen. But look at the bokeh. I mean, it brings the rim of the cup there into focus, and everything else is out of focus. So again, lovely. For this type of use case scenario, it's fabulous. I love this lens, I really do. Look at the quality of the image. Even though you might be able to see some flashing from the LED lights because of the shutter speed. We're still on the Viltrox here, and I think I'm going to have to put an ND filter on this, because when I go outside, the Viltrox literally can't be wide open at f1.4 in this sunshine. Again, it does look nice for these, because talking and walking, because you've got such a wide lens. Remember, this is a 13mm, that the wobble isn't even too bad on this, even though it's got no inbuilt stabilization in this lens. But let's have a walk through here. Follow me, and you can see. Let's walk through into the darker areas. This is where it comes into its own. Look. I mean, we're still on only ISO 160. It's quite dark in here. But you know, walking around, it's heavy as well, so let's try and hold it with another angle so my shoulders can. How's that look? Nice. I'm going to have to get this buzzing fridge fixed, I really am. I keep saying it on my videos. It drives me nuts, and I just never get around to it. So nice. Very good. But it's heavy and it's quite large. It's not massive, but it's quite a large lens. So let's see how the Nikon does in this scenario. So here we are, the Nikon showing f3.5. This is at 12mm, so it's wider. It is much lighter, and you can feel the difference on your hand. We've also got the VR in action, and I don't have to put an ND filter on, although of course I could have turned down the f-stop on the Viltrox, which I will do actually to show outside. But you can go outside, and even though I'm on 1/800th of a second, like a sunny day today, and let's try and hold it actually steady. How does that look? Let's go inside like I did with the other one. You get the same shot walking backwards into the bin. So the difference is the ISO now is up to 2000. I think on the other one it was maybe 160, 200 at this down here. But these cameras are good, these cameras are really good in low light, and ISO 2000 isn't really a problem with this camera at all. Shouldn't really be grainy. And the other way you might use this lens is sort of walking around, pointing it, and you want to walk around with it. So this is the Nikon with the VR on it. Washing's fallen over. It's a lovely wide. You know, if we go down here, look how wide this is. Yeah, look here. Let's try that zoom. So this is with the Viltrox lens on, F3.5, like I had with the Nikon to put them on the same. And you shouldn't really be filming. If you do, it's like only normally for quick snippets, but filming just holding it and walking like this. But anyway, how does that compare to the Nikon? So this is wide open at f4.5, wide open at f5, wide open at f5.6, wide open at f6.3, wide open at f7.1, wide open at f8, wide open at f9, wide open at f10, wide open at f11, wide open at f13, wide open at f14, wide open at f16. This is wide open at the maximum aperture of f3.5. 1/2000th of a second with no ND filter on, ISO 160, that's what the camera's picking on aperture priority. So again, this is wide open, this is 12mm, I'm going to zoom in on that sign. That's the maximum zoom. So a bit more walking and talking with the new lens. This is wide open f1.3, 3.5, 1/2000th of a second, ISO 140, all on aperture priority. So this is what the camera's picking. So what's the VR look like? I'm making no attempt to hold it particularly still, clutching it in one hand. How's it look? For this sort of out and about type situation. Beautiful day today, by the way. Wish it was like this all the time. And what I'll do is I'll show you the VR Sport next, the higher level, see if it makes a difference. This is it on Sport. I've never really used Sport, I'm not sure if it makes much of a difference. Let's try and hold it like I was before, not wobble it around too much. So how's that look? Wide open f3.5 again. This is with Sport VR on. Now, I never use this, but this is with sport, let's just get a proper grip on it. This is with sport and electronic, sorry, standard lens VR and electronic VR in the camera on. Obviously cropped in a bit. But what's the quality like? Does it actually make it more stable? Something of a local landmark in the town, an old water tower, and that was showing you the zoom. Some walking forward, standard VR on. Wide open F3.5. And this is the lens on the same settings, but this is with absolute maximum stabilization on. It's got sport on and electronic VR, which I've never put on both before. Does it make any difference? So I've just come across this graveyard, never been in here before. Again, showing you the power zoom. I can actually make this a bit, I think I'll make this a bit slower. You can change the speed for more cinematic zoom. So this is the zoom speed now on -2. Goes to -5. It's on 0 before. That's nice. Really nice that you can get some really good cinematic shots with that, I think. And here's the church. This is at F5. So this should be about the lens at about its sharpest, maybe a little higher to be at its sharpest. So I've just kept walking and walking, and I'm now at a shopping centre called the White Rose Centre. So I've walked 6 miles to get here. Problem is I've got to walk back now. So it's going to be a 12-mile walk today, but goodness me, this weather. Yeah, so we're talking the perfect day today, weather-wise. So I just thought I'd just keep walking. I got back 12.5 miles later. My feet now have big blisters on them, but it was a great day, beautiful weather and a great opportunity to get some footage. So what was the conclusion? Well, this lens I think is very, very nice. It's small, it's light, it's got the built-in VR, which for the outdoor walking around, taking on holiday, vacation lens is absolutely ideal. Yes, it's not the fastest lens in the world, but that helps keep the size and weight and price down. The lens is perfect for its use case, built-in VR, which works pretty well. What you'll see from the footage, I hope, is that when you're walking around with this lens compared to the Viltrox lens, this lens does actually get rid of some of those micro jitters. I do often run the Viltrox lens through Stabilization on Final Cut Pro, which gets rid of a lot of the jittering, and you can always do that. The post-stabilization does add artifacts in, so you can even run this footage through post-stabilization. It will have less artifacts when you do so because there's less jitter and movement in the first place. I love the zoom on this lens. I think that's going to be something I actually use quite a bit, and the different, obviously, focal lengths it gives you. So what do you think? Please like and subscribe. Let me know your comments below, and what I'll do is I'll finish off with some shots of the lens which have been taken on the Bokeh monster, which is the Viltrox 13mm f1.4. And my advice is, if you have a Nikon DX camera, or even actually one of the full frames, I've seen this Nikon lens being used on the Z8 and the image quality is fantastic. It's a small light power zoom, which there aren't many of those about. Both of these lenses are highly recommended. Let me know what you think. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you soon.